Good morning. It's the Uncle Lou here. That's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Also, in addition to that as well, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. Some of them are even watchable. I don't know about this one. You can let me know in the comments down below what you think about this particular video here. Shout out to Sean Miller over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. Guess what he wants to see? He wants to see a season preview and a game-by-game prediction for none other than the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's right. So that's what we're going to do today. I appreciate you supporting the channel, Sean, over there on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. That really means a lot to me. If you want to see me preview or predict a certain team, make sure you head over to the Patreon page. There's a post over there from me. You'll see it once you get signed up over there. Just go on that post, leave a comment, let me know what team it is you want me to do. People keep asking what team I'm doing next. Every time I get ready to do one of these videos, first thing I do, I head over to the Patreon page, I scroll through, I find a team that somebody has suggested over there, and that's what I do. Now, I'm going to try to do 40 or 50 of these before the start of the season. We started back about halfway through June. I've done, I don't know, 7 or 8 or so now. There's a playlist on this channel called 2022 Predictions. If you click on that playlist, the list will come up of all the teams I've done so far. Once I get done going through all the teams over on the Patreon page that everybody wants to see, then I'll start taking suggestions from other places like the comment section here on YouTube or whatever the case. If you'd like to get signed up on a Patreon page and help support this channel, there's a link in the description of this video that will take you over there and you can look around. I hope you'll consider signing up. It really is a huge help to what I'm trying to do here on YouTube. But let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes today. Of course, led by Ryan Day. Is he the best coach in college football now that hasn't won a national title? Kirby finally got one last year, beating Alabama in the national championship game. Ryan Day at Ohio State has pretty much done everything you can do other than win a national title. He's beat the brakes off of his rival, Michigan, for the most part, with last year, of course, being the exception. He's won the division almost every single year, won the Big Ten multiple times. He's been to the playoffs. He's won New Year's 6 games. He's pretty much done it all. The only thing left to do, win the national title. They thought they had a team last year that maybe could get them to the playoffs, and they almost did. The offense was great. Defense let them down at times. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we look at this year's Ohio State team. But they still had a really good year last year, only losing 2 games. They lost their opener at home to Oregon, which was a little surprising, and maybe should have been some foreshadowing about sort of the ceiling that Ohio State was going to end up having last year. If you remember all the way back to week 1 of last year in that Ohio State-Oregon game, Ohio State could not stop the run to save their life in that game against Oregon, and that, of course, came back to bite them in the last game of the regular season against Michigan when that game really got away from them there in the second half late in that game. They went on to play Utah in the Rose Bowl, which was an amazing game. Ohio State had several players sit that one out. Of course, Utah, I believe, had a couple as well. But Ohio State did win that Rose Bowl over Utah, finishing the season, what'd they finish? 11-2, I believe, right? With the 2 regular season losses and then the New Year's 6 Rose Bowl win. Biggest change this year for Ohio State, obviously, defensive coordinator. They bring in Jim Knowles, right, from Oklahoma State. What an amazing job he did there, too. In a defense, in a league that's not really known, honestly, at least not over the last 10 years or so, to really play that much defense. Oklahoma's been dominating that league for the last 6-7 years, really during the entirety of the playoff era. They didn't play any defense at all. It was considered a wide-open league there for a while. TCU has had a couple of good years defensively, but not like what we saw Oklahoma State do last year. Oklahoma State actually had a top 5 defense last year. Really good team, Oklahoma State. And defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, I believe, was a big reason why. He's one of the most respected defensive coordinators in the country, one of the best and brightest defensive coordinators in the country, and Ohio State was able to lure him away from Oklahoma State to Columbus to help turn that defense around. Most people think Ohio State's offense was good enough last year to win it all. They got to get better on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see if they can do that. On offense, they return a trio of what I think are legitimate Heisman contenders. They've got C.J. Stroud at quarterback, Travion Henderson at running back, and Najigma Smith at wide receiver. And Najigma Smith, wasn't he their leading receiver last year? I believe he set school records for receptions and yards last year. I think it's 1,600 yards. Now, 300 and something of those yards came in the bowl game. That was unbelievable. I don't care about who was in, who was out, who you were playing, what game. You have 300 and something yards. I think it was 345 yards receiving he had in the Rose Bowl alone. Just unbelievable. Now, Ohio State did lose a couple of high-profile wide receivers from last year's team, but they've got the best wide receiver room in the country, and I don't really think anybody else is even close. They've got Najigma Smith, which we've mentioned. They've got Marvin Harrison Jr., who's expected to have a much bigger role this year with the departure of Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Those two guys are off to the NFL first-round draft picks. They've got Emeka Egbuka, who was the number one rated high school wide receiver recruit in the country 2 classes ago. He'll be a sophomore this year. He saw some action last year, but again, I don't care how good of a wide receiver you are, right? When you show up at Ohio State, you're probably not going to play that much right away. You know why? Because at any given time, they've got 3, 4, 5 NFL wide receivers on that roster, so you're having to wait your turn. Marvin Harrison Jr. has done that. Emeka Egbuka has done that. And, of course, Najigma Smith returns for what will probably be his last year in Columbus. The offensive line should be pretty good. Well, you got this one tackle. It was like 6'8". I mean, you got some work to do on maybe on the interior, shuffling some things around, finding some guys there. But I think Ohio State's offensive line, if I had to pick a weakness of Ohio State's offense last year, and you're really being picky here when you try to find a weakness on Ohio State's offense from last year, guess what would be the offensive line? And I don't even think the offensive line was bad or weak. But, it was you had great play from C.J. Stroud, the quarterback. Maybe he runs a little bit more this year, but he was great. What did he have? Something like, 40 touchdowns and 6 or 7 interceptions. I mean, it was unbelievable. Completed over 70% of his passes, and that was first year as a starter. He's only going to be better this year, right? He was amazing. Everyone knows about your wide receivers. Travion Henderson was one of the best running backs in America last year as a true freshman. So if you were going to pick an area where maybe you want to do some improvement offensively, maybe you point to the offensive line. Travion Henderson will be a sophomore this year. I think he's going to have an absolute monster season. Now, Ohio State's got multiple running backs they're going to play. They got a true freshman that's very highly rated. I'd be surprised if he redshirts. He's going to play some. Almost nobody anymore just plays one running back, right? Yes, Travion Henderson is amazing. His household name. We all know who he is from last year. But Ohio State's got the talent and the depth at running back to keep him fresh and rotate a couple of guys in and out of there, and that's what I think they'll do. You shift over to the defensive side of the ball, and really, you need improvement on all 3 levels. I mean, that's just reality. When you watch Ohio State play last year, they seem to lack aggressiveness. They seem to lack almost just basic tackling ability. They took poor angles. They seemed poorly coached. Their technique was bad. It was really bad. And again, if you're an Ohio State fan, I can't imagine you're getting upset with me now for saying that. I mean, it was pretty obvious to anybody that watched Ohio State. In fact, it was pretty obvious to you, too. When the season was over, you wanted the DC run out of town. In fact, before the season was over, you wanted the DC run out of town. I don't think the issues on Ohio State's defense are talent related. I don't think it's an Oklahoma situation. Oklahoma had bad coaching, in my opinion, but they also lacked talent in key positions, primarily defensive line. I don't think it's a talent issue at Ohio State. Now, maybe there's not a Chase Young on this year's Ohio State team, but there are NFL players at all 3 levels, last year and this year, on Ohio State's defense. I think if they're coached up a little bit better, I think if the scheme is better and the philosophy is better, and I think most importantly, just the overall mindset of the Ohio State defense, it needs to be more aggressive, I think. And I think we'll see that this year with new defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. I would be shocked if Ohio State's defense didn't take a huge leap forward this year. And to be honest with you, if you're a fan of any other team, Georgia, Bama, Clemson, whatever team you want to name, you should be extremely concerned about an Ohio State team in 2022 with even a top 25 defense. I think if Ohio State even has a top 25, or not, forget top 5, top 10, if Ohio State has a top 20-ish, top 25-ish defense, they are going to be extremely difficult for anybody to beat if the offense is anywhere near what people like me expect it to be, and I think it's going to be almost unstoppable. It's just elite everywhere when you talk about the skill positions on offense with quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. If I was an Ohio State fan, I would be extremely optimistic about this upcoming season. Of course, we're going to take a look at the schedule here in a second. I'm going to go through and predict it for you game by game. We'll talk about the non-con. In fact, let's just go ahead and put that up now. Why don't we? I can't think of any reason why we don't. So we are. Look, to the people that say the Big Ten is, I don't know what these people are watching. It tends to be, look, I'm a fan of an SEC team, okay? I do think the SEC generally speaking, is the best conference in football over the last 10, 15, 20 years. The Big Ten is completely legitimate. The Big Ten is a power football conference. The Big Ten is extremely good, especially the Big Ten East. I think last year the Big Ten East was the best division in football, better than the SEC West, which is normally given that title almost every single year, right? But you look at the SEC West last year, Auburn was in the toilet, LSU was in the toilet. You know, you had teams like Arkansas and Ole Miss winning 8, 9, and 10 games while LSU and Auburn struggled to make a bowl game. It was just kind of a down year for the top tier of the SEC West outside of Bama. Not the case in the Big Ten East last year. Penn State spent a lot of time in the top 10 last year. Of course, Ohio State did. Michigan made the playoffs. And Michigan State damn near won the whole, damn near went undefeated. So some really good teams over there. Last year, and that's going to be the case again. So is Ohio State's schedule easy? No, it's not. It's gonna be tough. It's always tough to go 12-0. Always tough to go 12-0. And Ohio State got some difficult non-con games, or at least one difficult non-con game in addition to that as well. Can Ohio State go undefeated? And again, I'm going to give you my game-by-game breakdown and prediction here in just a second. But is Ohio State good enough to go undefeated in 2022? 100%. They're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, in my opinion. If there are any top 25 rankings or polls that don't have Ohio State in the top 3, they're completely illegitimate. I don't know what people are looking at or judging or ranking to put anything out that doesn't have Ohio State somewhere in the top 3. I would make the case that they should probably be ranked 1, maybe 2, headed into the season. I wouldn't rank them any lower than 2. Maybe somebody wants to put Bama 1. I'm not necessarily going to argue that. Okay, fine, put Bama 1, but then you need to have Ohio State 2. I could see them maybe as low as 3, although, like I said, I would have them at 2. So, yes, Ohio State is talented enough, good enough, well-coached enough to go undefeated in 2022. No question about it. Can they do it? Well, that's a different story, right? Alabama's talented enough to go undefeated almost every single season. Do they? No. Georgia's been talented enough to go undefeated in the regular season almost every single year for the last 4 to 5 years, and I've only done it once. It's not easy to run through the regular season undefeated. Let's take a look at Ohio State's schedule and see if they can do it. Now, you start out with a tough non-con game, but you do get it at home against Notre Dame. That's an obvious advantage to get this game at home. Another advantage, Notre Dame has a brand new head coach. Now, I know he coached a bowl game last year, but I'm not really counting that as his first game coach. It was an interim deal. It was an interim coach. He's got he's got a new staff now for this year, and this is his first off season, sort of being in charge and everything like that. So Marcus Freeman. So now Notre Dame loves this guy. The players love him. The fans love him. The university and the administration love him. And I have no reason to think that he's going to be anything other than a really good head coach. However, much like Dan Lanning, who just took the job at Oregon, and I think has potential to be a really good head coach, I don't know how you get, I mean, think about this. This Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, right? The first game, he's got to go on the road and play Ohio State, a top 2, top 3 team in week 1. First game ever as a true head coach. Dan Lanning at Oregon, he's got to go on the road. It's a neutral site game, but come on, the game's in Atlanta, and play Georgia. I don't know if there have been 2 head coaches that have had more difficult first games of their head coaching career than those 2 there. I would be shocked if Ohio State lost this game. Now, as a college football fan, I'm excited and looking forward to this game. These are 2 of the biggest brands in the history of college football, right? Notre Dame and Ohio State. And I think Notre Dame is legitimately a top 10 team. They've got a tough schedule, too, outside of this Ohio State game. They got to play North Carolina, Clemson, Southern Cal. So potential for some landmines there for Notre Dame, too. I just can't see Notre Dame winning this game, especially it being the first game with that new head coach. And besides that, I'll be honest with you, even if Brian Kelly was still at Notre Dame, or just pick your coach, I just think Ohio State is a much more talented team, particularly at the skill positions, than Notre Dame is. And I don't think Notre Dame defensively is going to be able to do all that much to slow Ohio State down. I think Ohio State will probably score in the 40s in this game. This is a good test early on for Ohio State's defense. This might not be the best offense they'll face all year, but it's a legitimate offense, right? Can Ohio State's defense hold Notre Dame to 17, 20 points, something like that? I'm almost more concerned about that aspect of the game when I watch this because I'm pretty convinced Ohio State will win. In fact, that is my prediction. Where is it? Let's put it up here. That is my prediction that Ohio State will win. There you go. I'm going to watch Ohio State's defense in this game because last year, Ohio State's defense in week 1 was a huge tell about what we were going to see from Ohio State throughout the season and most importantly, down the road in the Michigan game. They were never really able to turn it around, especially against the run. We'll see what it looks like here against Notre Dame, but I think if you watch this Ohio State-Notre Dame game, of course pay attention to the score. You want to know who won or lost, but pay attention to how Ohio State's defense look. Are they missing tackles? Are they out of position? Are they aggressive or not? These are the things that I'm expecting to change from last year to this year, and I think because Ohio State's playing a legitimate team in week 1 and not one of these pushovers or cupcake-type games, I think we'll get some of those questions answered right away in week 1. So you want to know. Arkansas State in week 2, clearly, I think you'll win that game. And for whatever reason you don't, then you got bigger issues than anything I could possibly talk about here. Same thing with Toledo. Holy Toledo. There you go. 3-0, the big one being against Notre Dame, and that's your non-conference schedule right there. The Big Ten, of course, plays 9 conference games and 3 non-con games. Ohio State gets their 3 non-con games out of the row, 1, 2, 3 to start the season, and they're 3-0. I would also like to mention and point out, although this is not a trash-talking video, I feel obligated to point this out. I can't help but notice that Ohio State plays not 6, not 7, but 8 home games. All I've heard from Ohio State fans over the last several years is that the only reason the SEC is any good is because they only play 8 conference games, giving themselves 8 home games a year, which, by the way, is ridiculous. I don't think Georgia has ever had 8 home games. I certainly can't remember the last time that happened. 8 home games for Ohio State, though. I guess if you win the national title this year, it won't be because you have 3 Heisman contenders on offense. It won't be because you have one of the best defensive coordinators in the country turning that defense around. It won't be because you have the best group of wide receivers in America. No, it won't be any of those things. It won't be because Ryan Day is an amazing coach who recruits at an elite level, develops players, and gets the most out of them. Nope. If you win the national title this year, it'll be because you played 8 home games, I guess. But you start your conference schedule, what a shock, at home against Wisconsin. Now, I've already done a version of this video for Wisconsin. So if you've seen that video, you already know I don't think Wisconsin has what it takes to beat Ohio State this year. In fact, I don't think Wisconsin has what it takes to beat several teams on their schedule this year. As long as Wisconsin is stuck with Graham Mertz, in my opinion, their offense is so hamstrung, there's no way they're keeping up offensively with a team like Ohio State. Not happening. Ohio State, I think, will pull away. Now, Wisconsin does play great defense almost every single year. Almost every single year, they're top 4, top 5 defense multiple times over the last 4 or 5 years. So let's say at the end of the year, I look back and Ohio State has averaged 40 points a game, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility at all. Okay, so maybe Wisconsin holds them to 31. You know, you beat Wisconsin 31-10, something like that. I don't think this game will be close is what I'm saying. I do like Wisconsin's defense, and of course they'll have a couple of good running backs, but as long as you're quarterbacked by, I don't care what team you are, if you're quarterbacked by Graham Mertz, you're not beating Ohio State. You just aren't. Then you play Rutgers. No use piling on Rutgers here. They're just a bottom tier team in the Big Ten. Greg Schiano, when he was there a decade or so ago, was able to get things turned around a little bit. I think he got him to 9 or 10 wins and then bolted to the NFL. Now he's back, sort of a renaissance tour there for Greg Schiano. Didn't work out that well last year. Maybe they'll be a little bit better this year, but again, I just think Ohio State is on another level. I really only think there's a handful of teams in all of college football that can compete with Ohio State this year. And unfortunately for the Scarlet Knights, Rutgers just ain't one of them. Now at Michigan State. Now, I think this is the toughest game on your schedule up to this point. No disrespect to Notre Dame or Wisconsin, but this is a road game. And, this does matter. I mean, we spend a lot of time in college football talking about home field advantage, and the reason is home field advantage is real. Now, maybe the home field advantage at Michigan State isn't what it is at Ohio State or at Michigan or at Penn State or at Wisconsin, but this will be a really, really electric atmosphere, especially if Michigan State gets out to a hot start again this year like they did last year. Now, they lost that running back, Kenneth Walker, which in my opinion was really what made that entire offense work. Not that they didn't have anything else, not that they didn't complete any passes or have any wide receivers that could catch the ball, but let's be real. If you were a team last year and you were playing Michigan State, your defense was focused primarily on slowing down Kenneth Walker. That opened up things for some other people that might not be opened up this year now that Kenneth Walker is gone. I don't think Michigan State is going to fall off the cliff. I like Mel Tucker. Of course, he's former DC under Kirby Smart at UGA before becoming the head coach out at Colorado for a year or so, and now been at Michigan State for a couple of years. And one of the biggest surprises in the country last year was the job Mel Tucker did there at Michigan State. I think they'll still be a pretty good team. Not good enough to beat Ohio State, though. Not even at home. I think the Buckeyes keep on rolling and get a win on the road against Sparty. You have your bye week. Bye week comes at a pretty good time in terms of it's about halfway through your season. In fact, it's exactly halfway through your season. You play 6 games, get a bye week, and then you play 6 more. You come out of that, you host Iowa at home. Good time to have a bye week. Iowa's usually a pretty physical team. They like to kind of play, they play slow, right? They don't like to score a lot. Well, it's not that they don't like to score a lot of points. It's just the style of football they play isn't indicative of that. They live off of turnovers, good defense, and ball control, right? Now, you get them at home. This is an advantage. At Iowa can be a fairly difficult place to play. I don't see Ohio State losing to Iowa anytime, really, but especially not coming off of a bye week when you get a week to rest up anybody that might have got banged up in the first half of the season and an extra week to prepare for whatever it is Iowa happens to be doing this coming year. I've got to give that one to Iowa as well. I think I just now put the Michigan State up there too. So you're rolling right along at 7-0. Now, you have a stretch of some of these are pretty difficult here. Back-to-back road games at Penn State and at Northwestern. And I'll just tell you right now, I'm not expecting that much for Northwestern. I know every once in a while Northwestern has a pretty good team, wins 9 or 10 games, been known to even win the division, I believe, a time or two. Pat Fitzgerald is a great coach. I like him. He played at Northwestern. He's been there forever. He's never going anywhere. Northwestern is one of those teams that every 5 or 6 years when they've got a team loaded with juniors or seniors or fifth-year seniors even, or now with COVID, 6-year seniors, and a couple of pretty good players at key positions, they can put together one of those years where they win 8+ games and challenge for the division. Even if this coming year were to be one of those years for Northwestern, great. They're not challenging for the Big Ten. They have no business on the same field with Ohio State, in my opinion. Now, you do have to play there. However, again, the talent discrepancy between Ohio State and Northwestern is unbelievable. When you look at whatever you want to look at, the recruiting rankings, the team talent index on 24, whatever, it doesn't matter. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine Ohio State losing to Northwestern unless they get beat up the week before on the road at Penn State. And I know I kind of talked about these backwards, but I think Penn State's going to be a good team in 2022. Now, a lot of people look at Penn State's record last year and shake their head, and I agree it wasn't good. Penn State was a totally different team the first half of the season versus the second half of the season. That quarterback, Sean Clifford, once he went down midway through the season, that was it. Ohio State's season was over. It seemed like they couldn't win a game after that. But in the first half of the season, they looked pretty good. They were in the top 10 for a couple of weeks. They're one of the reasons that people brag about the Big Ten East last year. One of the reasons I brag about the Big Ten East last year, they were one of the teams that was really, really good last year from that Big Ten East. Now, Sean Clifford is back. They lost some pieces. They bring some pieces back. James Franklin, it was rumored, might have been leaving. Maybe he was headed to Southern Cal. This was before the big Lincoln Riley announcement. Penn State gave him a big extension to try to lock him down. I think this is a big year for James Franklin. I mean, Penn State just shelled out the money, opened up the checkbook, gave him a big extension. You get your quarterback back who was injured last year. This is a dangerous game, I think, for Ohio State. It might be the toughest game on the schedule. Now, I know the Michigan game at the end of the year is the biggest game every single year. It doesn't matter how good Michigan or Ohio State are. I know that's the biggest game. But I really feel like this might be the most difficult game on the schedule all year for Ohio State, on the road at Penn State. You play a tough, hard-nosed football team the week before in Iowa. Then you got to go on the road and play Penn State. I do think this is the most difficult, the toughest game on the schedule. With that being said, great teams usually get up for the big games. When a great team loses, look at Alabama last year. Their loss came to a 4-loss Texas A&M team, right? Not a 10-win Ole Miss team. They blew Ole Miss out. The SEC championship game blew Georgia out, right? Look at Georgia's loss a couple of years ago to a 3-win South Carolina team, and then they beat everybody else they played up until the SEC title game. But you see what I mean. Great teams usually play at their best against their best competition. If you catch a team like Ohio State sleeping or napping, I don't think it's going to be on the road at Penn State. It's more likely to be the following week at Northwestern than it would at Penn State. Does it make sense what I'm trying to say? Maybe I'm not making sense. I don't know. Half the shit I say doesn't make any sense at all. Or you're more likely to lose at home to Indiana, I think, than you are on the road at Penn State. Indiana was terrible last year. A 3-win team, didn't win any conference games at all. The point I'm making is everybody at Ohio State's going to be looking at that Penn State game. No one's going to be looking at the Indiana game. Those are the games a team like Ohio State or any elite team, Georgia, Bama, whoever, tends to slip up. Look at the games Clemson used to lose in the regular season when they were going undefeated or 11-1, right? On the road at a terrible Syracuse team comes to mind. This is what I mean. So I do think you'll beat Penn State. I think it's the toughest game on your schedule, but I think you'll show up ready to go and win on the road in Happy Valley and beat the Nittany Lions. I feel like I spent way too much time talking about these couple of games here. I think you'll win at Northwestern. I also think you're going to win at Indiana. Now, I do think Indiana could be better than they were last year. I mean, hell, can they get any worse? They were really hyped up heading into the season last year, and all they did was poop in a plate 4 quarters, 12 games. They were horrendous. All right, now let me talk about your last 2 games now. At Maryland and home against Michigan. Well, you know what? Let me do it backwards. Look, Michigan, man, you had a great year last year. Harbaugh finally got over pretty much every hump that had been in his way, right? He finally beat Ohio State. He finally won his division. He finally won the Big Ten. He finally made the playoffs. It's not happening this year. I'm sorry. You caught Ohio State at the right time last year. Their defense couldn't stop a nosebleed when it come to running the ball. You pounded it down their throat. Congratulations. You deserved to win that game last year. It wasn't a fluke. These Ohio State fans that blame the weather. Look, Ohio State, y'all got to stop with this. Ohio State keeps telling me, Georgia or Alabama, if they had to play a game in the 30-degree weather in November up north, they would be terrible. Well, turns out if Ohio State had to play a game in 30-degree weather in the snow, they'd be terrible because Ohio State was terrible in that game. And Michigan shoved it in on you raw without even asking permission. You're probably still walking with a limp from that one. Not happening this year. Ohio State's going to get revenge at home. Ohio State's going to beat Michigan. So this game at Maryland. Now, of course, they've got Tua's younger brother as quarterback, right? Pineapple Jr., I call him. They've got a wide receiver they brought in from Florida, Jacob Copeland. Do I think Maryland's going to win 9 or 10 games? No, I don't. Do I think Maryland is going to beat one of the big 3 or 4 teams in the Big Ten East? Yes, I do. And it might be you. It might be Ohio State. Because of where this falls on the schedule, the week before the Michigan game, it's kind of a nothing throwaway game. I expect Ohio State to be 10-0 and on cruise control heading into what is going to look like an easy win on the road at Maryland. Maryland could win this game. This could be one of those games that Ohio State shows up sluggish. Maybe this is a noon game that no one's paying attention to, right? Breaking news, it's going to be cold, November 19th in Maryland. God forbid it snows half an inch. We saw what happened with Ohio State last year when that happened, but this is a dangerous game, and Ohio State fans are going to laugh, and there's no way we're going to lose to Maryland. And look, you're going to be favored by 24 in this game. You're going to be a huge favorite. There's no question. It would be a big shock if you lost. Almost as big a shock as when you lost to Oregon last year or Michigan, 2 teams you were huge favorites over. So could it happen? Yeah. And I've been sort of predicting all offseason that I think Maryland's going to beat one of the big 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten East. They're going to beat an Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State or somebody. Is it going to be Ohio State? Would there be any difference between Ohio State going 12-0 and 11-1 in terms of making the Big Ten title game? I don't think so, because I think every team in the Big Ten other than Ohio State would have at least 2 losses. It wouldn't matter. Turns out it's not going to matter either way anyway. I do think you beat Maryland. I just wanted to get you all agitated there by talking about the possibility of losing. I think Ohio State's going 12-0. Now, they're going to be favored in every single game, and it's hard to go undefeated. And would I be shocked if Ohio State went 11-1? No, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Possible games where, if I'm wrong here about you being 12-0, possible games I think Ohio State could lose. Notre Dame, no, I don't see that happening for the reasons I talked about when I talked about that game earlier. Wisconsin at home, no. I just think, is Wisconsin going to be as bad as they were last year? No, but not nearly good enough to beat Ohio State. Again, I think the chances of Ohio State losing to one of the best 2 or 3 teams they play, I think, is less than Ohio State losing to a Maryland or a Northwestern. So, no, not losing to Wisconsin. At Michigan State, maybe that's possible. Okay, I'll put that in it's maybe. I mean, I don't see it happening. I think Michigan State takes a significant step back from last year, maybe 8-4 type of deal. I don't see that happening. But maybe you say, okay, if you're forced to look for a loss somewhere on the schedule, maybe you say that one. Iowa off of a bye week, I can't, no, I don't see that happening for a lot of the same reasons I can't see Ohio State losing to Wisconsin. Iowa plays good fundamentals. They live off takeaways, but they're just so slow and methodical and like to win games 20-13. And I just don't see Ohio State being held to 13 points. I can't see that happening. At Penn State, clearly that's possible, right? Clearly that's a possibility of a loss. That might be the toughest game on your schedule, okay? So possibly, maybe you slip up there. And then at Maryland and Michigan, I just don't see it happening. I think Ohio State goes 12-0. If you're wondering what other teams I've done that might also be going 12-0, I've done an Alabama version of this video. You're welcome to click on it in the playlist and find out whether I have them going 12-0 or not. I haven't done Georgia. I haven't done Clemson. Those are the top 4 teams in most polls. I haven't done Utah. They're in the top 5 in a lot of polls. I haven't done, I don't think I've done Oklahoma State. Anyway, so far, of the teams I've done so far, this is the only team I've got picked to go 12-0. So there you go. Be sure and let me know in the comment section down below where you think I'm wrong. If you don't think they're going 12-0, don't just tell me I'm wrong, they're going 10-2. Tell me which 2 games it is you think they're going to lose, which 1 game it is you think they're going to lose, whatever the case. Even if Ohio State were to drop a game in the regular season, I fully expect them to be in the Big Ten title game this year with a trip to the playoffs on the line. I think even an 11-1 Ohio State would make the Big Ten title game, and I don't think anybody in the West could beat Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. So I think Ohio State is winning the Big Ten and making the playoffs. The question is going to be, are they going to be 13-0 and a 1 or 2 seed, or are they going to be 12-1 and possibly a 3 or 4 seed? To me, those are the only questions about Ohio State this year. I think they're absolutely loaded offensively. I think they're going to have the best offense in the country. I believe the talent was already there defensively to be really, really good. I think bringing Jim Knowles in to turn the defense around was a genius move. I think it pays dividends immediately. And I think Ohio State goes 12-0. There you go. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below. And I'll talk to you again real soon. Have a good morning.